Why do we, I had a question on my mind I wanted to answer. Why do we unearth every mummy that we find, but our graveyards are sacred? So I thought I'm just going to try to answer that myself. And I did. I wrote my first book. It won 4 awards. So I knew I was onto something. And I've been writing ever since.
What made you? Because there's an interesting thing, right? A lot of the times, like we have ideas in our heads, and you think other people would think the same, around the same realm. Like what you mentioned, it's like we're okay with like labeling things as archaeology, even though it's like technically it's a graveyard. It's like, what on earth are we doing over here? But then when you start getting pen to paper, you realize like this is my idea, like this is my own creative process, and like especially I could tell like with the amount of books that you've written, it's like being able to take those ideas and be able to make something out of it. It comes directly from you and
Yes,
nobody else.
correct. Absolutely. Is your creativity, your voice, and your spin on it for sure. And
It doesn't
one of
really.
the things I found in go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that doesn't
Go
really
ahead.
sound like Hollywood, but yes.
Oh, that's exactly it. That's exactly where I was going. Um, in Hollywood, when I'd write scripts and I had a first and last at one of the studios, it was great script, but women aren't marketable. Strong, independent lead characters as women aren't marketable. And realized this was, roughly 10 years ago. Um, and I thought, yes, we are. There's a lot of all my friends are smart, intelligent, independent women, but it might be because that's who I choose. But it's I found it very strange. I found it wrong. So when I wrote my first book, yes, the leading lady is an archaeologist, a scientist, and it did very well. So I beg to differ with them.
I've
Hollywood
noticed
likes to
this
prove
too.
it.
Oh yes.
Go ahead.
I have noticed that. I
Yeah.
have no one thing I have noticed, especially with interviewing independent authors and independent filmmaking houses and things. There's a there's a lot more of creativity and more free flow of how stories are developed, in the sense of where, yeah, there's still marketing, yeah, there's still budgets and making sure everything kind of falls in the realm, like exactly how much our actors are getting paid, and kind of everything is falling into place. But there's a level of freedom you just don't get from Hollywood. Like, yeah, today Hollywood does make a lot more films that are more open minded in the sense and have more leading roles for females, but it feels very much staged and pushed than actually like it's like you're just making this so you can just gobble up a demographic and make a ton of money. That's how it, like, to me, that's how it feels.
Yes, I agree. Women still scream a lot in movies and run away and trip and fall, and um, not realistic women. I was watching something the other day and I turned it off because it was someone else's fantasy. It wasn't a real strong women's characters. Uh, none of the women in the show I was watching act like any women that I've ever known. So you're correct. And on top of that, you
No.
don't have to cater to the celebrities in your movie. You don't have to cater to the executives at the studios. You write it, and it's between you and your editor. Right? It's not where you make this movie and they come back and say cut off 20 minutes and you have to go back and re-edit. Um, so it's a lot more freedom, absolutely, and a lot of creativity out there. TikTok
I
proves that.
Oh yes. And I have also noticed there are people that are still within the mainstream that, like one person that comes to mind that I've recently seen is like Kathy Bates. She's like one of the
Yes.
only actors that I can even think of. She's so Kathy. Like, it's like everything she plays, it's like, who approved this? Like, who will, like, it feels like she went into an office and told them, if you don't make it the way that I want you to make it, I'm leaving. And you know that you can't let me leave because I'm literally the leading role that will make you money. And it's like, damn, that woman has power.
Yeah, yeah, but there's very
Not
few
a
of those,
power.
like you said. Yeah, that's the one you can think of. Um, that's why they fight for equal pay as well. You might be second on the, credits, but you're still a leading, role in the movie, and you should be getting paid the same. And when we get paid the same, we can start our own studios. We can support our own films. We can put money behind a film to help a studio agree to launch it. When you come in and say, I'm going to contribute, $500,000, or I will agree to, put my pay as, based on ratings or anything else like that, and you can afford to do so, then you can get more of those films made, correct? So
Yeah.
that is part of the reason why, the culture of Hollywood started off wrong to begin with, when they would hire women, and they were more playthings and not really actresses, come to the party, entertain these actors. And women started off technically with very few, um, who would have power. So the only one I can think of is the one that was friends with Charlie Chaplin, Mary something or other, Radford. I don't remember what her name is, but she had power because she was one of three people that went into the United Artists, right? Chaplin, her, and I can't remember the third. I want to say Douglas Fairbanks, but don't quote me. Um, anyway, so
Well,
it literally was called a
there's also
cartel.
like, yeah, I mean, you also had people at that time like Jane Crawford, or Betty Davis, but they were so much of their time based on their looks and their features, that the way that they represent them. Like even Mae West is a great example of this too. Like they had to present themselves a certain way in order for them to be successful. They couldn't necessarily tell their own narrative, even if they wanted to.
I'd agree with that. Marilyn Monroe will fall into that category. Absolutely.
Yeah, James Mansfield. I mean, the list can just goes on. It just goes on and on, and I think that's what's really interesting. Also, is having somebody like you that's an author that kind of has that worldview of where you've had your experience in Hollywood, and then you also have this passion to write, and you're able to do it at your own terms, the way that you want to progress your stories, the way that you want to develop your characters.
Absolutely. It is free reign, and the creativity is mine. Um, and, that is unprecedented in Hollywood. They don't allow that for sure, especially from a female. But I mean, it's changing a little bit, so I don't want to be too sarcastic here. But again, I say I was in it earlier, but I still see those things. I have a niece in Hollywood now, and I just kind of giggle at things that she tells me because, yeah, I was hoping to be an advocate when I was, at studios. When I found out males got paid more than I did for the same jobs. So we shared an office. He had a desk next to me, got paid more than any of the
Well,
females in the office.
remember who are the people that are still running these mainstream organizations? Like Warner Brothers and Universal Studios and Disney. It's like the reason why a lot of these independent artists are being successful today is a lot to do with even people that are older. They have a younger mindset. They want to be able to have that open environment of having stories that not necessarily will gravitate towards, something like, well, that's not going to make us $200 million. Doesn't necessarily need to make $200 million. Sometimes a really great story where you have a female protagonist, or you know I remember I watched an independent film 2 years ago where the main character, she was this woman that was single and in her 40s, and she struggled with mental health her entire life. and she went in and out of, psychiatric care, and that was pretty much the movie. The movie was about her figuring out her next steps in life and, her introduction with other characters. Like, she wasn't like, this bombshell. She wasn't like this, I got this all together kind of nonsense. Like, it was a real life scenario of somebody in a very difficult area in Chicago. And that's not going to make $300 million, but they made it because it was a really beautiful and creative story.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we just lost him, but we can thank Robert Redford for a lot of independent filmmaking, right?
Oh,
And
yes. Oh,
Tribeca
yes.
is, with De Niro now, but yeah, absolutely. Hollywood wants, it's a flop if it didn't make the amount of money they wanted. Not that the film made money, they didn't make the amount of money that they wanted. So, example within last year was Horizon by Kevin Costner. It made money, but it didn't make the money they wanted, or the amount of money, because not as many people are going to the theaters now. Or you have to spend lots and lots of money in marketing to get people seats in the theaters, because we all wait for it to come out on video. But when it came out on video, streaming, it was number one for the whole month that it was on that streaming network. So the story's beautiful. There's leading ladies in there. Kevin talks about that, and when he talks about the movie. I've already seen two, Saga 2, and that is just as beautiful and just as a fantastic storytelling. And the critics are just like all over beating him up over this film, and I don't understand why. They're like, it's too long. Well, it's the same length as Oppenheimer, so what's wrong there? Same exactly. And you know, I know he doesn't listen to critics, but that makes people come or not come to a movie, right? And it shows that the critics are wrong when it went to streaming because it was so loved. And now, he's having difficulty getting Saga 2 out, distributed. And that's a shame. It's a, and it is okay. Yeah, there, he's trying to tell the real story of history, not the romantic story of history. People don't want to hear that. Is that why critics are so, oh, and it's so ego and this and that? And I'm like, well, if he was so ego, you wouldn't wait 20 minutes for him to show up on screen. I mean, there's just so many things I hear them saying they tear things apart. But then if they love something and they boast about it, and I go and watch it and think to myself, why am I watching this? This movie is, you know, for all intents and purposes, I'll use a nicer word, crap. And I don't get it. So, is it the power of the critics that they want to wield their power and take down someone who's legendary versus something else? You know I I've always been perplexed about that. All my years in Hollywood, I'd watch that and go, okay, this is a favorite child, and this one is not a favorite child. This one plays
Well,
Hollywood politics. This one does not. This one does what they
well,
think
we
is
had
feel good. That this one takes
we
risks, right?
yeah, I mean, we had that this year. We had I think it was called Challengers, and they hired every single A-list celebrity they can possibly think of and just throw them into a film. And then they were flabbergasted when it didn't do so well. I'm like, okay, you made a movie just to sell based on the backs off of famous actors. And personally, I watched a little bit of the film and I stopped watching it because I found it to it's just not a good movie. You know, you need a balance. The same thing with a story. It's like if you have this super whatever, like this A-list celebrity, and it's like they're the whole premise of the story and everybody else is the sidekicks. You're not gonna have a good movie. It's like you go back
Correct.
even like Devil's Wear Prada is a great example of this. You have somebody like Meryl Streep, you have Anne Hathaway. It's like Meryl Streep is obviously was more famous at the time than Anne Hathaway was, but the two of them together made, I think, by far one of the best fashion movies. And obviously, it's not realistic in any shape or sense, but it was a great dynamic. It was a great story. It worked well. like from start to finish, you're glued to the screen. That kind of story is what sells. That's what people gravitate towards.
Yes, absolutely. And the other sidekick, the guy who's famous um in that movie. But the
Oh,
story, you're right, the story is
Tucci. What's his name?
Tucci, yes.
Yeah,
Stanley Tucci.
Tucci.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was wonderful in that as well. I mean, all the characters blended well, which casting should have an award. Um they don't have that
Yes.
in the Oscars. Um
No.
yeah, the story. I mean, I was watching what everybody was saying was a fantastic television show, and it had huge holes in the story. All of a sudden, X would be happening, and then for 2 seasons, you didn't know about something, and all of a sudden, you know, season four, something would pop up, and I'd be like, I can't handle this. I had to turn it off, even though everybody was saying like it's the number one rated show. There were huge holes in the storyline, and it just drove me nuts. And I just watched something the other day, and I called my brother and I said, "Don't bother watching this." At the end of the story, it does. There's a big hole in the story where, hey, you didn't wrap everything up. There's still outstanding stuff. Are you leaving it for us two? I'm not going to watch two because you just disappointed me with one. So, how you write a story and how you present it and who you cast, and then, most people don't realize that the music behind it is huge to a movie because it sets the mood, it sets the sound. And, when you're somebody who's editing, which I started out as an editor in TV and film, when you add that music to it, it's completely different than watching, just the
I
film
miss
itself
that.
without that music. It changes
You
everything.
know,
Yeah.
it does. And I remember even like older films, and this is something that a lot of people today kind of get have a hard time watching older films for this reason. There was a point where you'd watch a film and for like a good few minutes, there's no dialogue. It was just music. They'd have the camera panning at the cars, and you'd see like a skyline or you'd see a landscape and there's just music. And then like down give a couple minutes, then they get into the storyline. And I felt like that just I don't know, it allowed you to like take a little bit of a breather, allowed you to relax a little bit, even like the start of the movie or the middle of the film. Maybe you can do a few things, kind of not paying too much attention to the screen until they get back. Like some of these movies today, it's like 3 hours of just nonstop script dialogue from start to finish. And like if you're not glued to that screen, listening to every single word, you can't follow along. You miss 2 seconds, you're like, oh, what the hell just happened?
Funny that you say that because I go to high schools and talk about filmmaking and etc. And I do say that you don't the problem with some scripts that I see is either, they have to fill in every screen. Then I talk about the movie Witness, played by Harrison Ford and that little boy, and his character John Book. And I said, there's this one scene in Witness that you have to go watch. And it is the little boy is in the bullpen at the station. John gets on the phone, starts talking. The little boy starts walking through the station. No dialogue. And goes by a criminal sitting in a seat who starts shaking his handcuffs and scares the boy. Then the boy continues to walk and he goes to a bookcase and he, every once in a while will look back at John Book and John will look at him and he's okay and he's fine. And John's still on the phone. And then he sees the guy who he witnessed the murder of. It is a police officer, and the young boy looks over with his big eyes and looks at John, and John looks back at him, realizing, oh, something's wrong. Gets up from the phone, walks over. The little boy goes to the point, and John Book or Harrison Ford comes over and takes his hand and puts it down. Not one word is uttered, and it speaks in volumes. So that's everybody's homework. Yeah.
And by the way, that still does translate in many ways to how we as human beings, how we process stories. You know, we've kind of veered away from this idea that stories have to fit exactly. This is the thing that pisses me off the most is that stories have to fit the exact narrative as our real world. Devil's Wear Prada, which we mentioned before, does not fit any real world view. Okay, I don't think anybody in history has ever gone through something like that and has actually been successful. Some people maybe, but that's not why you watch the movie. You're not there to be like, well, I work in an office similar like that, so we should make sure that that office is similar to what an office like. It's like, no, it's a movie. It's a story. It's not supposed to be real unless it's like Shakespeare. Like it's supposed to be like Alexander the Great, or I don't know, like some World War II movie. That's a whole different story. But generally speaking, we're not recreating history or real life. We're just making stories.
Right, we're entertaining. That's why it's called the entertainment industry.
Yeah, not the real world in industry. Yeah,
Industry.
exactly.
Who, who wants to watch that? God would have given
No,
us a
and you know what?
soundtrack if that's the way.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine every single time you made a sigh? It's like, where did that come
Well,
from?
you'd know when you're
Whoa,
walking into a dangerous scene. Yeah, you'd know when you're walking into a dangerous scene. Turn the lights on. Yeah.
lights are not working. Uh oh.
Hilarious. Yeah, so I absolutely, the difference in writing a book, obviously, is you don't have that visual connection that you can put in a movie. You can show somebody is strategic by they're in their office, they have modern office equipment, they have a three-layered chess set next to them, and you don't have to describe all that. You pick that up as the viewer. But when you're writing a book, you have to describe it in some way or another so that without being, the person's, a strategic individual. You want to write it in such a way that they can visualize without actually having the camera there.
Well, by the way, we saw this happen now with even, for example, J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter series. I mean, I love the books. I grew up with the books, and they did make the movies, but to be honest, the movies didn't really like after the first two. I mean, it felt like Harry Potter movies. It didn't feel like J.K. Rowling's work, honestly. So they're correcting that. Well, sorry, they're trying to correct that by turning it into a TV series, so that way they can put in more dialogue. But didn't you just say that a book is a different visual perspective? It's giving people the ability to read pages and then allowing their own mind to get an idea of what the characters are, who they are. Like the reason why, you have like the Sorcerer's Stone is written the way that it is because J.K. Rowling is trying to put you into Harry's story. Where he's living, his cousins that are taking care of him, like, you know, how he like starts off in school. Like you make that into a TV show, I hear you, but that's not, correct me if I'm wrong over here. It's like that's not the idea over here. We're not trying to like recreate books word for word to fit visual narratives like television or, for example, films.
Correct.
Two different,
Absolutely. It's
yeah,
two different, yeah, formats. Definitely.
two different
And then
formats.
again,
Yes.
yeah, then again, um, they see it as a proven um, property, right? Because it made money in the theaters. So of course they think it's going to make money in the television show instead of reaching out and getting somebody independent or a different story that they might take a risk showing. They're using something
God
that they
forbid.
feel that they can just easily switch over, right? So,
Mhm.
so it's kind of depressing, actually. It's kind of depressing. I don't need to see it in, yet another format television. I don't need to see it, done over and over and over, which, a lot of the I got to a point where my brother is into the Marvel characters and DC, and I'm like, I can't watch them anymore.
I'm done.
You know,
I'm
I
done.
I stopped a long time ago. Despite I
Same.
have some friends in the movie, it's like I'm sorry, I just can't. I'm worn out.
And
So
it, it's so disheartening because when you look at Marvel, Marvel used to be a series of where you had cartoons and comic books and graphic novels, and they really allowed you to break down the characters. You'd get different series. You'd have like even with the X-Men files. And then they just tried to boil everything down into movie after movie after movie, and it's like 3 hours of just nonsense. Sorry, it's just like a lot of it just feels like you're watching 3 hours of. What taught me about the 3 hours of nonsense was somebody created an AI video of putting Thanos into the Star Wars universe, and this regular dude with a lightsaber, and like Thanos is like running over, and it's just like dead. 2 seconds later, dead, gone. Like the holes.
I haven't seen that.
My God, like I was just like, that's gold, because it's true. It's like if you put it into like it's a comic book like spectrum. It's like, yeah, he's not really an interesting character at all. You just made him purple and big and terrifying and gave him some crazy story, and now he's like some super villain. It's like that's not
That's
creative.
what's like
Yeah,
Godzilla meets Bambi. Have you seen that one where Godzilla just walks
they
out and steps on Bambi? Bam. Yeah, exactly.
gotta
Putting
make
two
that.
together.
They gotta make
Absolutely.
that. Oh my God.
Oh, that's made.
Oh,
That's made. Yeah.
are you
So,
serious? Please.
yes. Yeah. You can look that up. That's your homework assignment.
Are you serious? There's a
Yeah. Yeah.
Godzilla against Bambi?
Yeah. It's not very long because he just steps on him. So, but yeah,
And I
that's out
gotta.
there.
But you, something we've been talking about this already. You've taken a very different approach. Like you said from the very beginning, like you've stepped away from Hollywood. You've kind of shaped yourself now as an author, writing your own stories. Do you do you feel do you feel upset that you left Hollywood? Do you feel like there's ever a point that you'd go back, or you're kind of happy where you ended up right now?
I am happy where I ended up right now, though one of my books, Road to Elysium, has been requested by about 5 or 6 different studios. The script requested, which I've provided them. So who knows? That's a based on a true story. The only one that I've done that's based on a true story. And I laugh at the fact that I could end up back in Hollywood. But it's funny because a lot of people ask me that question. Don't you miss the glamour, the lights, the no, because the only time you get the glamour and the lights is on the red carpet and you are hairsprayed, you haven't eaten for weeks, you're pasted and taped and put together and you're wearing heels that you can't stand and you're in pain. And that's the glamour part of Hollywood, which is not glamorous at all as the person walking down the red carpet. So normally, like we'd go to the Emmy Awards, it's 3 o'clock in LA when we do, we're walking the red carpet and you're sweating in LA, and your makeup's coming off and, just so you can make the East Coast time slot. So it's, a lot of, no, Hollywood. I used to tell people I worked in a warehouse. I'd go somewhere and meet someone new. They're like, what do you do for a living? I work in a warehouse. And, I didn't want to say I worked in Hollywood because people have these very wrong perceptions of what it's like to work in Hollywood. It's a job. It is a job. And yeah, you work with famous people, but they're people. And, if you've been around it
Mhm.
long enough or get jaded, they're people. They have, they have upset stomachs. They, have good things in life. They have bad things in life, just like the rest of the crew that's working. So some of them have more power than others. Some I would never work with, ever.
No, and you know what?
So
You know what's very interesting. Like besides doing podcasting, like I'm in the automotive industry, and there are people that represent themselves in the automotive industry. Pretty famous people, and they talk about vehicles, and I'm sitting there, I'm laughing my ass off because some of the cars that they're promoting, they're some of the most unreliable pieces of garbage that have ever been made in history. And people got to remember something. Just because somebody is famous doesn't mean that they're necessarily smart or know the industry through and through. It's like just because somebody is an actor doesn't mean like they're a novice on films. You know, they are like, you take somebody that's been doing comedy films for 30 years, very rare. There's very few people that can do this. 30 years doing comedy films, and you put them in a horror movie and you make it like one of those like surreal, like dark, you're gonna be laughing your ass off. And it's not supposed to be funny because you took a comedian actor and you put them in a surreal horror film. Like, nobody's gonna take that seriously. It doesn't make them less of an actor. It just means they are good at what they're good at. Doesn't mean that they're
Right.
God's gift to the universe or they're some superior being. It's they're trained professionals in a specific niche. That's it. That's all it is, right?
That's it. That's it. And their faces on a big screen. That's it. I
Big
normally
screen.
don't use the word celebrity when talking with my friends. I say well-knowns, because
Well
normally an
knowns.
actor is the smallest part of is the smallest part of the film, right? The writer takes a couple
Yeah.
of years, the editing takes a couple of years, and shooting the film takes about 8 weeks. They generally are the smallest part of making a film, but yet get the most credit for it. So, I just say they're well knowns because people all over the world know them. They're, to me, celebrity is an interesting word. So that's my take.
Yeah. No, and you know what's interesting? I was just thinking about this. The same thing applies even with you writing a story. Because when you have your main characters and you have all of the people that are a part of those stories, they become the focal point. But yet all of the little details, the where they were or what they're experiencing and how they got there, or that's kind of like the side, but without those pieces, it's just, can you imagine a book that's just characters? Like Johnny, Rebecca, Danny, and Devin. The end. That's the whole story.
Right.
That's literally what that's literally what would happen. You need those other pieces in order for them to be showcased, in order for that story to actually work.
Yeah, and a couple of other things that you add to the story is real life things. So, we could be walking somewhere and trip. I always use this example. You know, so do I have a character in my book walking and trip? Well, yeah. Or his wife, grabs his backside and gives him a squeeze in the middle of investigating a murder. Yeah, that happens in real life. So I put it in my books, things like that. So when you lose that real life aspect of your characters and they're all mechanical and doing what they're supposed to do, right? It takes away that realism and adding some actual facts. I like to do a lot of research. I like to add facts to my books. A lot of people say, I love reading your books because I'm going to learn something too. But you have to put it in such a way that it's part of the story, not them sitting there with dialogue, having a, teaching session on what this fact means. And, it has to be a conversational or, something shows up and they read or something, but it needs to flow with the story. And a great example, of course, is Indiana Jones when he's kind of recounting when he's there. They're talking about the ark, and he's opening up that old Bible and talking about it, and he says, "Yeah, but Abner." This other character did research and da da da, and it kind of flows in the way he's talking to let the audience know instead of these dry spots where someone turns around and goes, well, da, 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 and you're like, oh, I'd shoot myself now, I crack up at it sometimes because does in every one of those high crime television shows, Law and Order, this and that, the head investigator turns around and goes, okay, I need you to fingerprint, and you'd be like, they don't know that? How many crime scenes have they invented? You're
Right.
re-explaining everything so we, the audience, have a good idea what's going on. We have a good idea, ladies and gentlemen. We've watched 20,000 of these. And do you have to do that every single time? And here's a pet peeve.
Yes.
How come when I need to find a parking spot, the first parking spot's never open, but for everybody else, whoever's running into something in a movie, they get the front parking spot and go inside the building. Anyway, that's just a fun
Good.
thing that I like to tease about.
No, honestly, you touched on something that's really true because I remember This came out a couple of years ago. There was a TV series called The Expanse, and it was one of those TV shows where they brought on an actual team of scientists because this was taking place in the future and was dealing with space travel and all of this. And you know the best part about the whole TV show was? They didn't have to explain to you how things worked. They didn't tell you how, when they plugged into this thing that had purple juice going into their brain when they were going crazy, speed just happened. Because that in that realm, what they discuss with scientists in order to give it that real flow, which a lot of it is based on science, that's just how it is. You don't need an astronaut that's literally all the way over there by Saturn's belt telling you on how they're pressing this and this button to turn around the Saturn's orbit. I don't need to hear that. Just do the damn story.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely.
I love that. Whenever I think also some of the most important key elements, and correct me if I'm wrong, the least details you can give and trust the writer or whoever's watching or whoever's experiencing, that's, I feel, is the best approach. Because when you try to over explain everything, I feel like when I'm reading or when I'm watching something or hearing something, I feel stupid. It's like, you don't trust me that I can make my own judgment for myself, that I can be able to understand the story. Like, I'm too stupid to understand. Like, the idea of the parking lot situation is like, come on, okay? There's no such thing as where there's an available parking anywhere, unless you're like in the middle of who knows where, in Georgia, like at some shopping mall that's been closed for 35 years. Like, no, okay? That's not realistic, all right? Give Gotta give a little bit of realism and trust the audience, the people that you're putting out the work to. Gotta have a little faith. Great
Yes,
song,
and
by the way.
I do that with my characters as well. Um, the name you give them is important. I give some background, but I don't go in and talk about skin tones or nationalities or, a lot about my characters. You learn about them over time. But a lot of people have told me they really relate to my characters. And so I've continued writing that way, where I don't give these big, huge, descriptions of my characters and what they've gone through their whole childhood and all this stuff. I don't like reading that. There's some books that I know are number one sellers that spend more time on description and the scene they're building and this and that, but I get bored. I want the action. I'll put those books down. I can't stay with those books. I write books the way I want to read them. I like intelligent women. I like action. I I've dabbled in romance, not my thing. Not that my stories don't have romance because real life has love and romance. But the main thing is they call them hard boiled cozy mysteries. I love a mystery that doesn't foreshadow. I don't like foreshadowing. I think I got that from working with Steven Spielberg. I don't like a lot of foreshadowing. I don't want you to know what's coming. And I love it when you're laughing about one thing and something happens and it changes. And, Spielberg's notorious for that, turning a scream into a laugh. And, I tend to do that in my books as well because I like that. So, how you write it and what you do, there could be a real tense situation and then she burps. You're like, what? Yeah, well, that could happen. So I put it in the book.
You have that also though with people even like Quentin Tarantino is a great when he came out with Once Upon a Hollywood, and I'm one of the do you know what the one scene that stuck in my head was the fact that he put in Mama Cass. That was the one thing out of
Right.
that whole movie that stuck with me. Because the one woman that was given shit her entire fucking life that nobody cared about, like, he created a story that honestly was full of gore. It was violent. It was horrific. But in those soft moments, you got a glimpse of what Hollywood was in the late 60s. I think the film supposedly took place in 1969. And just adding that element alone, it's like you don't need to know that it's Mama Cass. You don't need to know why she's walking. she's just a part of the scene. It's just that's the scene that they're moving into until they get to the climax. That shows like a level of dedication to the story that if you're
Uh,
able to showcase well, it's memorable. Like even though the movie came out so many years ago, I remember that.
Correct. I agree with that. Absolutely. And it can catch a viewer a little bit off guard, but it's an interesting off guard, right? You're like, oh wow, what's going on? Why is this here? You know? And if you don't leave a hole and you explain it, then it's wonderful.
I know. You get I think also and I've noticed this also about other authors and you touched on this too. Sometimes characters, the best way for them to develop is you don't always need to know everything about their story. Sometimes having where you learn about their story from specific moments, and that's it. You learn one little piece. You know, either a tragic thing
Yeah.
that happened in their life, something that they struggle with. Maybe, they're possibly a little bit narcissistic and they're a little hard to difficult to deal with, like, Steve Jobs. But that is, I think, is okay. You don't have to have where the character needs to have, who their mother was, where they were born, where they've lived their whole life, what they drive, what they wear. It's like at that point you might as well just make Vogue magazine. Why are you writing a book? Just
Yeah.
make Vogue magazine. You know? That's what a magazine is. That's what a book is. That's what a
Yes, and
novel is.
in real life, people don't explain everything to you. Hi, I'm meeting you. Well, I live here and I was raised. That's not what we do in real life. We learn about people as we trust them, as we get to know them, and as my characters get to know other characters, they start to trust them. Why are you this way? Or this happened to explain to me, and they have a conversation and it's revealed that way, just like we would in real life. I don't like putting all that up front. I like it to be part of the story as the story goes along. Absolutely. We learn about them and the other people in the book in the same fashion.
It allows I think it also like allows a level it kind of contradicts what I was saying earlier, where it's not supposed to be real life, but it's not necessarily trying to be real life. It's trying right correct me if I'm wrong, it's trying to be relatable. Because what you're trying to do is you're
Correct.
trying to create something that can really if you're writing a book that's for like a cat or a dog, that's a whole different story. But you're writing books or stories that you're having other people that you want to have to interact with. There's a difference.
Yeah, there's a difference. Relatable is a good word, and the fact is, it's part of the story because that's how we learn. That's if you come in and give all the details about the character up front, then what's to learn? What's to read? What's the journey? It's a journey, and it is still fictional by all means because you've created this character and you've created their background and you've created who they are. So it as to real life, have people actually gone through what they're going through? Absolutely, which makes it relatable. And the way it is released to your reader and to the other characters in the book, because they're not telling you necessarily the reader, they're telling other characters and you're listening in. So that makes it different too.
It does. Have you because you said this before, you've written quite a number of books. Do you feel like you run out of ideas? Or you got so many ideas, you just want to keep on writing?
Absolutely. In fact, the book that's coming out on the 17th, I promised myself, because I promised myself the last time I released a book, I'm taking 2 weeks off of writing. It is very difficult not to write because in my head there's stories going around. So my next book is releasing on the 17th of October, Fear Struck, and I'm already 2 chapters in on my new book that I'm writing, number 16. So they just keep coming. Yeah. I mean, there's a million ways to have a story and tell different and do different twists and turns and just have fun with it. And sometimes I get so involved in a story that I'm on the journey with the story. So that makes me feel good because if I'm on the journey with the story, I'm hoping that's what happens to my readers.
You you know, I don't want to be one of those people, but it's kind of true though, where a lot of the time experience really plays into the tools that you're able to utilize throughout your life. Um, I mean, in your case, do you feel that Hollywood has allowed you to be able to pursue the writing career that you've been able to pave out for yourself? Or you feel like you could have done
I
this without
think,
Hollywood?
well, I've always been a storyteller. I won a speech contest in sixth grade, believe it or not. And I was first accused of my parents having written the story, which, if they knew anything about my parents, would know they did not. They did not help me at all. So I've always been a storyteller, reason I went into Hollywood. But I will say, because people ask if you're a plotter or if you do it by the seat of your pants, I have the story visually in my head. So like when you're a director and you're directing something, it's visually in your head, and you have to relay that to the actors and actresses portraying those characters, or the cinematographer on how you want the shot set up, et cetera, right? So I don't plot. I can see where my story is going to start. I know where it's going to end, and I have a feeling of the troubles and tribulations that are going to happen in the middle. So and it plays out, I assume, kind of like a movie. Now, I don't remember if it was that way when before I went into Hollywood, but it certainly is now.
Yeah. It's it's a lot of what ifs, right? Because I feel like a lot of the times we like to say, well, I could have done this, well, I could have done that. But I think every single thing that we do is a stepping stone that allows us to get where we are now. And I think that's the most important thing, right? It's not where
Yeah, the most
what
important thing is to do it,
yeah,
right?
literally
The most,
it's like
you can say,
literally
well,
taking
a
the
million
step
what ifs. Yeah,
to
actually moving
actually
forward to do what it is you want to do.
yeah. Um okay, we've been talking about your books for this whole conversation. Where can where can these people find your books? Where can they find your work? I know you have a website that makes it a lot easier for a lot of
I
people.
do. Yeah, my website is my name. It is Kaya Oliver.com.
Easy
That's
peasy,
mine. And
lemon
then my books are
squeezy.
on Amazon. Yeah, easy,
Okay.
easy. It's Kaya Oliver. So make sure you have the A in there because there's other people out there without the A in the middle. Yeah. And then I'm on social media and all over the place, and that's listed on my website. If you want to join me
Okay.
on Facebook and see what's coming out, my newsletter, whatever, it's all right there on
Yeah.
my website for you to go ahead and look up.
Yeah. And you said you also have a new book that's coming out in October.
Dude, it's called Fear Struck. This is my author's copy. So Fear Struck. Um,
Look at that.
it's a
Hey.
it's a hey,
Nice
people
cover.
say it's a gripping psychological thriller. I really love that picture.
I
Yeah,
love
so these are
psychological
all,
thrillers.
yeah. And it's about
Literally
an
my favorite
author.
genre of books. Really?
Yeah.
An author
It's
writing
about
about
an
an
author
author?
who's a yeah, and that's why it felt so real at times. That I was like, I wonder if this could actually happen in real life, where an author,
Hope it doesn't happen to
is now
UK,
accused of
please.
murder. Oh, me too.
This-
So yeah, could you imagine? Oh, scary.
Oh my god. I think that honestly, I think that's really incredible. I mean, you for sort of anybody that's listening, Kay has like a very large selection of books spanning from a plethora of different genres. So if you get bored by one, Kay's got you covered with another. So you can never you if you're getting bored, then honey, you got to figure out a different way how to read.
Yeah, I've got
Right?
over 30 literary awards. I'm in Who's Who in America, and I made Fiction Author of the Year for 2025. So, yeah, I think I have some good writings behind me.
Oh my god. And I'm gonna I'm gonna make sure I'll put all the links and everything for you below, and then obviously with social media, I'll tag you along. Once we get this episode is out. And man, I have to say, like, I really appreciate like you taking the time and really being able to be the type of person that, you were in the mainstream environment and kind of stepped out of it and kind of has shaped and made something for yourself. And it's not belittling or anything. It's that sometimes in life we realize that we want something more, we want something different, we sometimes want something better for ourselves. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think freedom is sometimes a little bit better than restriction.
Absolutely. It is. Being able
Right?
to be in charge of my creativity, having experienced the opposite, um, it's amazing, and I enjoy every minute of it, and I'm very happy with the choice. So I know some people
Yeah,
wouldn't understand it, but then again, they don't have to.
they don't
They're
have to.
probably, they don't have to, and they might be doing something that they're not enjoying, or they haven't tried something and find out they enjoy that more. So, like I said before, I've heard so many people tell me, "Oh, I want to write a book." Well, great, sit down, start writing it, because it's not going to write itself. So, even if you're putting in 15 minutes a day, do it. Learn something. Do a small novella. Learn all about it, publishing and book covers and editors, and find yourself a good editor. A novella is a smaller book, as you probably know, and take it from there. You don't have
Yeah.
to jump in the deep end with both feet. So, no matter what your passion is, if it's painting, if it's some photography, you can do little things and learn along the way. And if you start finding you really love it, then what's to stop you but you?
Yeah. Being able to make your own journey. That's simple.
Yes,
Ah.
that's
Listen,
simple.
again, thank you so much for taking the time, talking with us, and opening up the world to Kay's incredible books. For anybody that's listening, I urge you to check them out. I'm sure you're going to have a fun journey, and I want to definitely check out this like psychological
October
thrillers in
17th. Yes.
October 17th. Um, I'll leave the links and everything below. If anybody wants to check out more of the podcast, you can find us at Lost in the Pod. We are on Rumble and we are also on Substack. So we'll see you on the next one. All right, peace out. Yeah.